Jerry and Charlie riding through the airwaves, bringing you the heat. Come on, pull your fans. Now get up out your seat. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. Now you're listening to Shea Station.
Today is Monday, June 23rd, the 224th episode of Shea Station. My goodness, time flies. It's not going to be a special one, folks. The Mets are mired in a deep, deep slump at the worst time possible. They're 1-8 in their last 9 games, and those 9 games have come against very good teams. 6 of them coming against division rivals. My friends over at the Mets Up podcast said that the season started with that series against Atlanta. Well, if you believe in that, the Mets are 1-5 this season. They were swept at Truist. They lost 2 out of 3 at Citizens Bank Park. They have been sleepwalking through baseball, and oh yeah, no off day today for a 4-game set beginning tonight at Citi Field with none other than the Atlanta Braves. Jerry Blevins, he's getting his tan on. He's on vacation with his family. We wish him well. Did not want to bother him with doing a podcast, but doing a solo show is hard. Did one a couple weeks ago. Not exactly an easy gig, so I brought on the professional. If you think I'm a Mets fan, you have no idea what a Mets fan really looks like until you've seen the content coming from none other than Tyler Wardy. Wardy NYM on all platforms. This man is a fiend for the New York Mets. He's at it every single night, and I thought there's no one more qualified to be a guest host on Shea Station today, so I brought him on. Wardy, how the hell you doing?
Jolly, I'm fantastic. This has been a long overdue. I know that you've been on my platform as well, so I'm really looking forward to chopping up with you all things Mets today. And sadly, we don't have a lot of positives to get into. You know, it would have been nice after, maybe a 6-game heater instead, dropping 8 of their past 9. So let's get this puppy rolling.
Yeah, I mean, the 2025 Mets have been streakier than I think anyone could have expected. I mean, I know no one forgets, but you're coming off a 6-game heater against teams that you should be beating, the Rockies and the Nationals, and I thought that would be a good funnel of momentum for this team going into Truist. My expectations weren't high. I'm sure yours weren't either. We've seen the Mets play baseball in Atlanta. Aside from Game 161 last year, it's been the same story over and over again of how that house has become a place of horrors for the New York Mets, and it was no different. It felt different for about 7 innings in Game 1 when David Peterson was dealing, and then things fell apart rather quickly, and that felt like it really bled in to their Philadelphia series. We have a lot of ground to cover. I'll try and keep this in order, but we're going to do our best here. We're not going to cover too much of the Rays series, guys. I know we haven't talked since then, but that Rays series was one to forget. The biggest thing there was Clay Holmes was lifted after the 5th inning, and then the Mets have not been the same team since that move on Pride Night, so it's pretty mind-boggling to see. But we'll start really with that Atlanta series. The Mets were coming off their first time getting swept since their Seattle trip in August 2024. They went to Atlanta on a low note. They looked good in Game 1. David Peterson has kind of been the stopper and the workhorse of this rotation, especially as they've nursed injuries for Kodai Senga and Tyler McGill. It was that 8th inning. And that's really where this week of baseball begins for the New York Mets. This whole story of dreary play begins with that 8th inning when David Peterson got the ball to open the inning against Nick Allen. Nick Allen, I see him in my nightmares. What is going on? This man with rec specs is working walks and making unbelievable plays at shortstop. Allen worked a walk. Peterson got to face Acuna again, a 4th time. I think every Mets fan knew that wasn't going to end well. Starting from that point going forward, Wardy, I guess I want to ask you, because I haven't really gotten to chew on it as many other Mets fans have. Did you agree with the decision for David Peterson to start that 8th inning? And would you have gone about it any differently after the walk to Nick Allen?
I'm always fascinated by these questions because I think it's very easy as a fan to focus on what actually happens and that be the end-all be-all. But the process and how we got here is just as important because that dictates, was Carlos Mendoza in the right way of thinking, the wrong way of thinking? Were we too reactionary as fans? And me personally, in that moment, I was perfectly fine with Peterson starting the 8th inning. I didn't think that was an issue. My issue was after Allen got on base, your number 9 hitter, that's where there needs to be a change. Why wasn't, a guy in Reed Garrett, for example, ready to get in there? And that is where the frustration really started to kick in as a fan. If there's one thing that we've noticed, especially this season, I'm going to piggy this right back to you, Jolly, is the following. We have seen Carlos Mendoza, and last year too, to a degree, but it was easy to get overlooked when the Mets had the run in the summer. But the one commonality with his bullpen decisions is sometimes he just does not have anything prepared at all. In the sense that, okay, you think your starter is at north of 90 pitches. Surely you're going to have someone warmed up and ready to go. But no, that just isn't the case. And that's kind of been something that we've seen on a more frequent basis the past couple weeks. Is either no one's ready or, they are ready and we decide not to utilize them like they did in the Tampa Bay Rays series with Oscar Brosban up for almost 2 innings, and they go to Paul Blackburn instead. He gets rocked, and that has really been the story for this Mets team for the most part since then. And I was at that game, so not loving what we're getting from the boys right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think this is a big pro Carlos Mendoza pod, as are many Mets fans right now. They're very pro Carlos Mendoza, but this was a tough one because you want your manager to trust your horse. I mean, we loved it when David Peterson got the 9th inning, was able to complete the complete game shutout against the Washington Nationals. This was the different side of it, you wanted to trust your guy to get big outs deep in the game when you necessarily might not trust your relievers at this point. Reed Garrett, he's been on a bad spell, but this was kind of before things really started to fall apart this past week for him. And to his credit, on short work in the bullpen, comes in, gets a couple outs against Austin Riley and Matt Olson. You're 2 outs, you're 1 out away from getting out of this huge jam, and then the Francisco Alvarez pitch call, which I don't even know if I want to say credit to Alvy, because I really do wish Mets fans didn't know this. After the game, Francisco Alvarez reveals to the press that Reed Garrett called for a fastball and pitch com. Alvarez overruled him and said throw the splitter again after a really ugly Marcelo Ozuna swing. He barely got away with contact below the zone. Alvarez calls for it again. Garrett complies, gives up a bases clearing double. The rest is history. The Braves win that game. Alvarez is going to be a big topic in today's pod. He was recently demoted to AAA Syracuse. There has been a litany of bad moments, especially this past week, on the mental side of Francisco Alvarez, and I do think that move is correct. We'll dive into that a little bit later, but that was the moment where this game shifted. 1 out away, and so the game is now tied. The backbreaker for me was what happened the very next inning. Juan Soto immediately gets on base. Pete Alonso rocks a ball to the right center field wall. Ronald Acuna Jr. does superstar things, makes a superstar level catch, turns a double play. Soto's got his hands in the air because the umpire makes a late call on whether it was out or in play. And that was just kind of the cherry on top. At that moment, if you're a Mets fan, for even, since 2021, you knew the game was over at that point. The Mets are not going to come back from that. Credit to Edwin Diaz for throwing a scoreless inning, but they did drop game 1 5-4 in 10 innings on the walk-off sacrifice fly. Partly because Francisco Alvarez throws behind the runner at second base instead of throwing to third, allowing him to advance and enabling the sacrifice fly. Again, we're going to talk a lot about Francisco Alvarez, and we're going to get off this Braves series because really there's not too much more to say. Chris Sale deals in game 2, 8 2/3 shutout innings. He actually goes on the injured list days later with a fractured rib because he made a spectacular diving play in the infield against Juan Soto to preserve that shutout. So I don't. Well wishes to him, the human being, but I'm glad we don't have to see him again this week. When we
right,
host
both
the
things
Braves.
can be true. You're happy that you don't have to see him anytime soon, but you never wish injury. Yeah,
you can be a fan at the end of the day. You're not rooting for injuries, but you know what? I don't want to face Chris Sale again, so I can be at least a little relieved in that way. And then game 3, the Mets absolutely swept through it. Clay Holmes afraid to throw strikes, really, to left-handed batters especially. They walked 9 Braves hitter in this game. The Mets produced only 7 base runners. It was a 7-1 blowout loss. I had the TV off, I think, in the 8th inning in this one. Did not watch the end here. And then just the flip of the coin there, the Braves went down to Miami and lost the series right after because I just think it's the Mets versus the Braves. I don't know. I had higher hopes for this series in Philadelphia. The Mets swept the Phillies earlier this season at Citi Field. I think we were both at the day game midweek when they got the walk-off, if I'm not mistaken. And that was fun because it was just like there was like 30,000 people in the ballpark. Like, does no one have work anymore?
Oh, it was electric.
We kind of work in baseball, so it made sense for us. But I was like, what are you guys doing here? But I loved it. That was one of my favorite games I've attended this year. So I had high hopes. Blade Tidwell got the spot start in this one. It was originally supposed to be Justin Hagenman. He came in for bulk in game 3 when that game got thrust to the wayside. Tidwell, I thought for his part, looked a lot better in this outing compared to his first start against the Cardinals. But again, this is someone that I don't think the Mets can rely on to actually give them 5 innings. It always kind of felt like it was going to be a bulk outing. He had to nibble a lot, but I thought his fastball played up. He looked really sharp in the early goings, and it kind of just looked like he lost steam. Were you encouraged at all by what you saw from the Mets rookie, or was it kind of just, a run-in-the-mill thing where they executed a game plan against the Phillies, which they've had for a while?
I think for Blade Tidwell to be rushed up last second, I mean, we're talking so last second that Justin Hageman, who was initially supposed to schedule to be the bulk reliever for this outing, had to come in the day prior because the Mets bullpen was getting absolutely rocked. So I'm actually pretty impressed with what we got from Tidwell. I was there too. I'm on a 3-game losing streak right now, Jolly.
Boy.
I haven't
Oh
witnessed a
boy.
win since the first game in LA.
Oh,
Make
no.
it make sense in LA, not even at Citi Field or anything. So we're all over the place. But Tidwell was fine. I really liked he had that nasty strikeout too on 97 upstairs, which was nice. He had a nice IVB on. We also saw him top out 99. I did not expect him to go even 4 innings. I actually said that to my buddies pregame today. I'd expect him to be out here before the 4th inning concludes, and that held true. The unfortunate part, however, is that the Mets, and you'll get to this here in a second, outside of what's been some nice little heroics on the home run front, really haven't had a whole lot to show outside of it.
No, not at all. I mean, this is a show where we like to highlight the positives. I do have a positive we can highlight. It looks like Jose Butto has refound whatever was lost for him early in the season. Since May 30th, he's got 11 innings pitched and no earned runs, 10 strikeouts to 5 walks. He gave us 6 outs of bulk relief in this game, which I thought was so big to kind of, get it to the later part of the game where the Mets were tied. It became a battle of the bullpens. And I don't know, whenever the Mets play the Phillies and we're in a battle of the bullpens, I like our odds. But this is where Reed Garrett really had his worst outing of the year. It feels like it's going to be maybe an annual thing for him where Reed Garrett starts out a season hot, kind of hits a wall. I didn't think it would happen this year because it felt like we really found his role well as like the fireman of the bullpen, putting out all the rallies. But instead, Reed Garrett let the floodgates open this one, did not record an out, 4 earned runs allowed. The Phillies were batting around. It got ugly, and this one's tough because you had a chance to steal the Blade Tidwell Zach Wheeler game. Zach Wheeler threw 5 shutout innings, but the Mets got 7 base runners against him and got him out after those 5 innings. Again, bases loaded in the first inning. They had plenty of opportunities along the way. They were not able to capitalize, but I still think 2-2 tied ball game after Alonso and McNeil went back-to-back. You have a chance to steal this game, and for it to end in such deflating fashion, I feel like just put an overcast over this entire series for the Mets. I had really low expectations going into the next 2 games, even though on paper this is a game you don't expect to win. Was there anything you saw late in this game that was telling of the Mets going forward, or was it kind of just another loss in this domino effect of bad losses for the Mets?
It was just the typical rollover that we've seen over the past, week and a half, 2 weeks now, where after they have themselves either a tied ball game and then they have themselves yet another deficit, they just have not been able to get themselves out of the rut they otherwise did greatly, especially in the first month and a half, 2 months of the season, where, yes, the numbers with runners in scoring position were still underwhelming then, and that's been the reoccurring theme with this offense all year long, that you and I have both beat that drum plenty. But especially when you look at the Mets reliant on the lawn ball, as kind of their end-all, be-all right now, and we saw them, the games continued, obviously, that you'll get into in a second, that is where I looked at that and I said, yeah, that's a problem. Because on one hand, we were feeling on such a high with McNeil and Alonso going back to back. And before we even had a chance to appreciate, the Phillies did something that the Mets at their best do greatly. And that's pretty much retaliating right away. Whether it's the half inning after or a full inning after, the Phillies absolutely pounced. The bank was rocking. It was a sold out crowd and they took advantage there big time of a Mets team that has been depleted on the pitching end and an offense that's kind of stayed the same. And you mentioned how the Mets had a chance to steal this game 1 with Blade Tidwell. That's exactly how I still feel, and I know this shouldn't be living rent-free in my head, but it does because I cover every single game, is the first Justin Hageman outing in Minneapolis, where you had Harrison Bader absolutely torching his former team. And if that didn't happen, the Mets had some clutch hits, they would have been able to get out of Dodger with a series victory. So that's another thing I think of, right? You think, okay, the Mets are going to get rocked against Philadelphia. It's because Blade Tidwell is the last-minute spot start. No, he's far from the liability. It's Reed Garrett looking like Reed Garrett did after he got overworked to begin the 2024 season. And then it just went on from there. The only positive in this one out of this entire series, Jolly, is Taijuan Walker still thinks he's a New York Met. So, I mean, I'll tell you that, not a whole lot to be happy about at the very moment.
Taijuan Walker, forever Met. Yeah, he helped us out a lot in this series. He looked good out of the bullpen earlier in the season. Don't really know what's going on there. This led to Game 2. The Mets finally got off the schneid in Game 2. You mentioned that they've been living and dying by the home run ball. Well, how about 7 solo home runs? I don't know that I've ever seen a stat line quite like this one. You mentioned that not a lot of things are going right for the Mets. One thing that is going right is Juan Soto beginning to really look like the superstar that the Mets paid all that money to. Since May 30th, he's the second most valuable player in baseball with a 1.6 wins above replacement, 24 for 70 in 21 games. 8 home runs, 21 walks, and the best OPS in MLB at 1.243. He was 4 for 5 with a pair of home runs in this game. The Mets had the opportunity to do something that has never been done in Major League Baseball history, which was 2 home runs by each member of the top 3 of the order, because Nimmo punched 2 solo shots. Lindor had a home run, but they did come up short there. This extended the Lindor home run win streak for one more day before it was abruptly ended the next day in a 7-1 rout. A big story for me in this one, though, was Griffin Canning, who we've kind of been seeing the regression back to the mean for Canning. I thought that his stuff looked actually pretty solid in this outing. He really had to gut through the 4th inning here and then made it look easy in the 5th inning. I think he went 1-2-3 with 3 strikeouts, against Stott, Kemp, and Marsh. Canning is someone that I don't think Mets fans expected to be reliant on at the beginning of the season before the Manaea and Montas injuries. He was actually viewed as like the swingman of this bullpen and maybe even a fringe guy to make the roster. Now it feels like he's been your 2, your 3 starter, and for a while that felt good, especially in that outing against the Dodgers where he went 6 shutout innings, but it's been really rough going for him. He's been missing with his changeup. He hasn't been able to trust his pitches as much. This was, I think, a really welcome sign. It's not going to be the sexiest final line, 5 innings, 3 earned runs, and 4 strikeouts, but the big thing for me was 2 walks. This is a Phillies lineup that obviously does not walk a lot. They chase a ton, so it was a good matchup from the outset for him, but for him to not be afraid to go after guys and get outs when he needed to and put strikes in there, I thought this was a welcome sign for him, and hopefully going forward he can be more relied upon as the Mets begin to face lesser opponents in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you highlighted Canning, because there's no denying that he was a clear regression candidate from the start of the season. I mean, when you're posting like a 2.35 ERA throughout your first number of starts after being batting practice a season ago, I'm going to go on a limb and say that that's not going to be sustainable all season long.
I think so.
But the fact that Canning, after giving up 2-3 runs early in this ball game in Philadelphia at the bank, and then settling down enough to give the Mets still what was a solid 5-inning outing, that was huge, because without that, who knows obviously how this ball game goes. Thankfully, the Mets had the long ball, and that was reoccurring. And, you talk about positives from this series. If there is a fun little stat out there to share as well, it is, to my knowledge, the Mets actually have now the MLB record for 6 solo bombs in one single game. They're all by lefty batters. Kind of nuts when you look at that. Between Lindor, Jared Young,
Jared
Nimmo,
Young got in the mix.
Soto. I mean, everybody and your mother got a home run from the left side from that ball game.
Yeah, it was wild. I honestly thought Mick Abel didn't look too bad. I think the Mets just worked some really good at-bats against him, especially I think the moment, where things fell apart for him, obviously, is that 3rd inning. They go back-to-back-to-back. But, each of those at-bats, that's a 7-pitch at-bat, a 6-pitch at-bat, and a 7-pitch at-bat. That's just the top of this Mets order when they're right can be so dangerous. It doesn't matter if your pitcher's on. They can find a way to get through to him. And I just think that, with this hot and cold stretch, I still have all the faith in the world of the talent of the top end of this lineup. The problem has been that after you get to the 5-hitter, the steep drop off from the bottom of the order has been, really tough to watch. In this game, it's less apparent because Jared Young gets a home run. Francisco Alvarez pulls a fly ball for, I think, the first time this season, maybe. And then Beatty and Mauricio have not been good either this month. And it's just tough when rallies get stunted constantly and you're so reliant on this like boom or bust home run ball. It works in a game like Game 2, and it fails in a game like Game 3, where the Mets simply couldn't get much going on offense at all. I think they were maybe too reliant on a big David Peterson outing to bail them out in this one. And Peterson, he was due for, I think, a stinker. He's coming off that 9-inning complete game. It's clear that he's been working a lot harder lately. He goes into the 8th inning against Atlanta, and I don't know about you, but watching this game, he kind of just looked tired. Like he was sweating pretty hard in that 3rd inning. He wasn't able to get his slider over. He wasn't, locating as well as we've seen these past couple outings. And the Phillies made him pay. This is a team that he's pitched pretty well against, especially in the playoffs last year as well. It was an uncharacteristic outing for sure for him. 5 earned runs for the first time since May 15th, 2023. It's been a long time since David Peterson's been hit around like that. And it came against Kyle Schwarber, which you kind of expect even if it's lefty-lefty, and Edmundo Sosa, who mashes against lefties but took him way deep to right center field. And after that 5-0 lead early, it kind of felt like a wrap because the Mets once again failed to cash in on early opportunities against Jesus Luzardo. And then he's the kind of guy that, powers up that 3rd time through the order with his deep arsenal and this one was just gone by the wayside. Tough to watch, especially when it's Sunday Night Baseball and it's the only game on, so everyone's watching it, and you're watching the division lead get taken from you. A brutal stretch of baseball capped off by this absolute sleeper of a game. The one thing is Lindor hits a home run late in this one, and you're happy because you get a Lindor homer. Great, his stats improve, but you're sad because you know that the home run streak is about to end when it's 7-1 and the Mets have no life. So just a really dreary series loss here. 3 weird games, like 3 just lopsided, kind of boring games, and the Mets come back home with their heads hanging low a little bit after that one.
I was genuinely bummed when Lindor hit that out of the park because I knew they weren't rallying back. I was like, can we at least have this one good thing still going?
Nope.
Because the crazy thing is that if you add not only regular season games to playoffs, it had been 30 consecutive games.
Right.
The Mets were 30-0 when he hit a bomb going back to last year's postseason. So a shame that it ended there against the Phillies in Philly, but hopefully, once he gets a new streak going, it can be even better than the last for all we know. I looked at this series, and David Pearson was certainly not a guy I had on my bingo card to be giving up 5 earned runs in the first 4. And that was, I think, selfishly my own fault for thinking that, he might not dominate, because if you look at since the start of the 2024 season when he came back from the hip surgery, he's had 200-plus innings since then, and he has had a top 11 ERA in baseball, right around 2.77 entering the start. So very uncharacteristic, as you mentioned. And there was some concern. I heard some from fans, some uproar. I did see slightly. He looked like that he had some slight uncomfortability with stretching out his hip a little bit the inning prior. And I do have to wonder if that all factored into why he then got rocked a little bit there in the 4th inning. Maybe something tightened up slightly. I'm not sure. He didn't speak anything post game to make you believe that he's injured in any way, shape, or form, but that was just something that he took away. And then on the offensive end, Jolly, listen to this. I mean, this is at one point, and I'm curious how you feel, but for me as a Mets fan, especially when Steve Cohen first bought the team, I was very much in favor of trying to have as many home run hitters as possible in the slot, because it felt like that a lot of times they had slap hitters, they had Pete doing their thing, but they didn't have a healthy balance. Now it's a little bit the opposite. Everyone's hitting solo bombs. You hit 10 home runs in a series, yet you mean to tell me that you only score twice with runners in scoring position in that 3-game set, and you drop 2 out of 3? I mean, what is going on here, Jolly?
Yeah, it's been a really tough watch. I mean, we mentioned the bottom of the order just not coming through this past month, but it goes deeper than that because it is the runners in scoring position thing. We had that weird Lindor double in game 2, which the camera didn't even properly show. Nick Castellanos ran into the corner not knowing where the ball was. And outside of that, the Mets have just been squandering opportunity after opportunity. Even in game 1, bases loaded against Zach Wheeler, 1 out in the first inning. Jeff McNeil rolls over into a double play after a decent at-bat. It's just how much worse can things get with this Mets team, which, in 2022, fans don't like to remember that season, and I get it. But that was their calling card. It was pass the baton, continue the rally, 1,000 cuts. That's how you kill the opposing
Philadelphia
pitcher.
Especially. Don't forget that huge rally back the first half of the season.
The 7-1, exactly. And, I don't think we had that feeling in game 3 of this Mets team is about to bring together a comeback. It's just, it doesn't really feel like this offense is capable of that right now. And I'm sure that things can change because, like the Phillies, this Mets team has been incredibly streaky. I mean, coming into this 8 of 9 stretch for the Mets in a losing fashion, the Phillies have won 8 of 9. Before their 8-1 stretch in these last 9 games, they were 2-10 in their last 12. So I don't really know what's going on with these two teams because it kind of just feels like they can either be hot or cold, and there's no in between. And it's really been that way for the Mets this entire season.
Oh, let me just say this because I want to hear your thoughts on it. The Phillies, when they had their heater, when they won like 8 straight, what was the commonality? They were playing the Pirates, the Rockies, and the A's. That's when they were all on clear downslide. So that made sense as to why the Mets were kind of climbing, dropping at the time when they initially lost the lead for the first time this year to Philadelphia, north of a month ago or so. Then they get it back, especially when they win 6 straight against teams they're supposed to beat. But now they've dropped 3 consecutive series against teams that, they're not going to necessarily win every single time out, but they're all teams that we expect the Mets to win at least 2 out of 3. And now to see Philadelphia going back and forth, this seesaw has kind of been bananas to start the season, and I think that's an understatement.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so interesting to zoom out of this horror. I mean, this has been one of the worst stretches of Mets baseball probably since, this time last year during May when the 2024 Mets began their slide. The Mets are still 14 games over 500. I looked at the standings and I was like, really? It doesn't feel that way. And it's the really good part. I mean, you're going to hear clamoring from Mets fans endlessly about how, they've done all their winning against these bad teams and they have a record against the Dodgers. But outside of that, what have they really done? Well, good teams have to beat bad teams. If you're going to compete in this long 162 game season, you have to get fat on bad teams. And the Mets have done precisely that. It's provided them this cushion. Obviously, you want them to play better against their division rivals. You want a better record than 1-5 so far, with 4 more coming up. But at the same time, the Mets, because they've played so well at home and against bad teams, they've provided themselves this cushion that they think they desperately needed, where a skid like this doesn't completely derail the outlook of your season. They're still 24-20 against winning teams. Like the Mets have done a lot of things right. It's just this recent stretch in June, which, by the way, I don't think their June record is all that bad either, because they were winning so much early in the month.
That's kind of crazy.
What do you think their June record is? Let me guess.
My assumption is that their June record is like 2 games above 500.
They're 10-10, which with
I was close.
a 1-8 stretch in there, that's not all that bad. That means they went 9-2 preceding this. I don't know. I'm upset, and you want this team to play better, and you want the bottom of this lineup to perform, and you want the rotation round out, and you're valid in all of these things. But at the same time, they're 1 game out of first place. They're 14 games over 500. I'm not really ringing alarm bells yet. I just hope that this team is not sleepwalking their way to the All-Star break. That's my one concern of, like, we're still 3 weeks out from that Midsummer Classic, and I know that the Mets have been playing good ball for the majority of the season, but don't take your foot off the gas. Really earn that break and play good ball through that. And to the front office's credit, they're beginning to recalibrate this roster just a little bit as we get into the updates here. Obviously, it's a David Stearns-led team, so you're going to have new bullpen arms pretty much every day. I'm not going to go through all those moves because it's a lot. Justin Garza went up and down. Chris Davinsky's back up, and he's pumping 98. I'm going to leave that to the professionals. Whatever they need to do, get it done. I'm sure we'll see Brandon Waddell again at some point soon. But the biggest thing here, and the thing that we need to discuss at length, Francisco Alvarez, 23-year-old catcher, is going back down to AAA Syracuse. Hayden Sanger has been recalled. This was a move that people were talking about for quite a while at this point, and I'm of the belief that I really didn't think the Mets were going to do it, just because of the next option, Hayden Sanger, while he's a defensive plus, doesn't provide you much offense at all. And I know that Mets fans have been singing the praises of Luis Torrens, but Torrens in the month of June has been bad, like the worst hitter on the team level bad. So I didn't think the Mets would go through with it, especially a day after Alvarez's first home run in what feels like a calendar year. I think the biggest thing for this has been there's been too many mental mistakes. The one thing that you can always rely on with Francisco Alvarez is that if nothing else, pitchers love throwing to him. He calls a good game. He's able to steal you strikes. He's decently proficient with throwing runners out, not to Torrens' level, but still he's a threat behind the plate. But I outlined a couple of them. It's obviously game 1 against Atlanta, overruling Reed Garrett. That's kind of a toss-up. You can throw a pitch there. Marcell Ozuna is a good hitter, but I think he wore that pretty well. And in addition to the throw behind the runner in the 10th inning, there was a really ugly pick attempt in Griffin Canning's outing, which just felt kind of lazy. Trey Turner was up to bat. It was a bad Canning slider, I believe, and Alvarez just kind of stuck the glove out on a knee, didn't go over there to block it. That could potentially save you a run. I don't know. It felt like these things were piling up, and you could see it in his body language. You could see, after an ugly at bat, he would hang his head low, and he just didn't really look like the guy that we fell in love with in 2023 that was constantly having a good time, constantly had that big smile on his face. And the biggest thing is that Francisco Alvarez is young. He's 23 years old. Most catchers who are big prospects at that age are not even up yet. Maybe they're getting their first cup of coffee. This is Alvarez's 4th year in the show.
Adley Rutschman hadn't even made his debut yet at this current age.
That's wild to think about.
I feel like everyone forgets about that.
That's crazy. Yeah, he was 24 when he came up in 2022. Played the full season. But yeah, for Alvarez, I just think that he's suffering from too much exposure at the major league level too early in his career. I want to get your thoughts, though, on this demotion to AAA.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Alvarez guy. It's really hard not to be when you have one of the largest IFA signing bonuses in team history as, a Venezuelan catching prospect, and then at the age of 21, you hit 25 bombs. I mean, how can you not be locked in as a fan? And since that point in 2023, what have we seen? Well, we've heard the reporting, we've seen the reporting of pretty much Eric Chavez, one of the Mets hitting coaches, along with Jeremy Barnes, pretty much making Alvarez think that what that season was is not what he should be building towards going forward, focusing more on his balance of his true offensive game, hitting for more contact while sacrificing power in doing so. And you add the drastic adjustments into his swing that we've all seen Alvarez make, from looking like a man that when he hits a home run, he demolishes a baseball every time, to now it's like you're grateful if he hits, a home run every 2 months at this current rate. And we did get that, but now he's sent down because you got to send him down on a high, I suppose. Maybe that's the Mets philosophy here, that, getting the confidence a little bit up just to send him down. Not entirely sure how that'll work, but I digress. After that 2023 season, Alvarez has not been the same for a couple factors. And I think obviously it's the confidence. When you're at the age of 21 doing anomaly things, not only you are a slugging batter, 25 home runs as a 21-year-old, but you have elite defense. I mean, we're talking an elite framer, a really strong blocker, and when you have future Hall of Famers and guys like Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander basically advocating and going to bat for you, saying how much like we basically prefer you and how you are going to be the future, naturally that's going to set lofty expectations. So to see him sustain the hand injury that he did in LA a year ago, rounding first base, it still cringes me when I saw that thumb went right into the ground. I knew it was going to be terrible. He wasn't the same from that point on for the majority of the season. Obviously, the defense also lacked last year, we saw, which really took me back. Because it's like, okay, if the bat is not going to be consistent right away, that's fine. The defense is there already, but it's already starting to regress. And then you get into this season, the hamate bone injury in spring training, you're out for your first month plus, and back-to-back years with an injury to that catching hand, and you made all these hitting adjustments that we saw in Atlanta thanks to a place that JD Martinez recommended this past offseason. And even then, you're seeing him hit for opposite field constantly, great, awesome. But the fact that there is no proper balance from going basically from a slap hitter, originally a pull hitting big bomber of a home run hitter, to a slap hitter going opposite field constantly, that's quite drastic. And that is not, I think, what the Mets were initially signing up or buying into, nor is that Alvarez's game. So I think between having outside source help, conflicting that with the inside source help and Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes, the back-to-back injuries, and the confidence thing. And then if you just want to throw this wrinkle in there, Jolly, I can say this as, a young Mets dad myself. Now that Alvarez is a father, you have to wonder what those emotions are like, if at all, for him this season. That can't be overlooked because everyone handles those things differently. He's only 23 years of age. I have no clue how he's wired whatsoever. He might be absolutely all over the place for all we know right now on the mental game. And I think that's exactly why at the end of the day, the Mets made this decision regardless of that home run. This was something that, like you, I too did not see happening initially whatsoever. The same way that I didn't expect Juan Soto to be moved out of the 2-hole. I thought we were going to see Lindor, Soto, Alonso as your 1, 2, 3 for the majority of the season. And I told all my viewers, once that changes, we'll talk about it. But I'm not buying into it until Manny does it. And he did it. So it's like, okay, they're clearly making adjustments. Now they did this with Alvarez. I'd imagine he'll be out the next 2 to 4 weeks, potentially up until the All-Star break. I think that makes sense. Otherwise, why send him down just for 10 days? I just don't see how that really benefits him right now. So clearly the Mets made this decision strategically, and I think they obviously prioritize Sanger's defense so much so that they think that Sanger can help the staff right now while they're in their rut until Alvarez hopefully builds that confidence back up, hits for more power, potentially simplifies things. And defensively, we know he has work to do because he was kind of costing the Mets games towards the end here. And it's one thing when you don't have the runners in scoring position clicking. It's another when you have a pitching staff that's far exceeded expectations, now coming back down to reality, and then some. And then you mean to tell me that your once defensively minded catcher who hits bombs is neither of those things consistently? It was kind of the perfect storm, unfortunately, for Alvarez, I think, to have this send down happen.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned the Mets organization philosophy shifts of the past, because it's never really felt reactionary. It's always felt calculated and, to a point, earned. Like you mentioned, the Soto shift. We saw some of the worst baseball Soto's played in his career. A lineup shift happens. Suddenly, Brandon Nimmo gets a kickstart from being in the 2-hole. Soto gets his own kickstart from being in the 3-hole. These changes don't always work, but it always feels like the Mets are they're not, just feeling pressure from fans and stuff like that, and that's what causes them to make these moves. And I don't think this is a move that was coming from pressure from the fans or pressure from Steve Cohen or pressure of team performance. I think this is a 23-year-old kid who, I'm glad you mentioned the baby, because I think that definitely needs to be mentioned. He's a new dad,
Absolutely.
So he's entering this phase of his life way earlier than he, maybe would have expected years ago. And he's dealing with that. He's dealing with this whole new approach to offense that I think when you read the offseason reports of JD Martinez is helping Francisco Alvarez, you get excited. You're not going to be like, oh, what's he going to do to him? JD Martinez is a guy with a steep career resume. But, I mean, the simple fact of it is just go to Francisco Alvarez's hit spray chart on Baseball Savant from 2023 to now. It's extra base hits galore, basically everything to left field. And even in 2024 with that thumb injury, he's got 10 home runs here, and all of them, or 9 of the 10 are to center or left field. This year, 3 home runs, 1 to right, 1 to center, 1 to left. That's not Francisco Alvarez ball. And that's that he has the strength to give you that 25 home run season. I'm sure you sign up for the big hacks that turn into whiffs and the strikeouts. He struck out 110 times in 2023 in exchange for that big power from the catching position, which so many teams write off as like, well, that's a hole in our lineup, but we'll take it because we know we're getting good defense. When he was providing neither, it was writing on the wall that something needed to change. I'm really glad that at the very least, Alvarez is young enough where this does not feel like it's going to derail his career in any significant way. We have no idea how long he's going to be down, though. I mean, this could be potentially, maybe it's the end of Francisco Alvarez in 2025
don't
baseball
say that,
for the
Jolly.
Mets.
No.
But there is a world where that happens, and if it's what he needs to get back to the player that we all expected him to be 2 years ago, then so be it. I think the Mets can do just fine with a defensive catching tandem of Torrens and Sanger. So that's just one of the moves that the Mets are building up to this week. The other one, which we don't know the corresponding move yet, but it looks like Mark Vientos is going to be activated off the injured list today. The rehab stint didn't go well, but then again, no Mets rehab stint has really gone well this year. We'll talk about Frankie Montas in a second as well. Vientos, I think, hit under 103 games. Whatever. Doesn't matter.
He's washed, clearly.
Yeah, he's washed. No, I mean, Vientos is a guy that I think most Mets fans have belief that he'll be able to get right in some way because he can't be as good as he was last year in such important games and not be that guy going forward. So I think, if nothing else, getting a new body in the middle of the Mets lineup will be a welcome sight for Mets fans. We're really feeling the void of Jesse Winker right now. You're really feeling that lingering Brett Beatty injury. Hopefully Vientos is healthy and can give you quality Major League at-bats. Again, no corresponding move yet. I think we theorized it's probably going to be Ronnie Mauricio, who kind of got tossed into the fire with all the injuries and probably got called up sooner than he should have. He'll probably be the guy going back down to AAA. I guess just any parting thoughts on Ronnie's brief stint with the Mets this year?
Well, with the assumption that Ronnie's going to be the corresponding move, I would say that he's exactly what we all saw. If you guys were paying attention in Syracuse, I was watching highlights from every single game he was there where he was tearing the cover off the ball and he looked great. But we know that he's very raw when it comes to the talent. He's not one of these players that's going to be overly polished, especially after not being in the bigs since, the second half of 2023. Not only has things changed for him since then, dealing with significant knee injuries, but the game has also changed in just a 2-year span. Let's not act like the 2023 season is the same as 2025. They're different. And you're seeing Mauricio go through the trials and tribulations of a young player just try to make themselves known at the major league level. And defensively, we've seen some of those hiccups, obviously, whether he's playing at the hot corner, maybe getting some reps there at second base. And offensively, we know he's definitely more of a bat first guy from the left side than from the right side. And I'm really curious to see if Mauricio is able to truly develop and blossom to an everyday major leaguer, if he will continue to stay as a switch hitter, or if he takes the potential future New York Mets Cedric Mullins route, which would be to actually go from being a switch hitter to just batting from the left side to have more success. So Ronnie, final thing to have to say on him, I think that there's still plenty of potential for him for sure, but the Mets have such a clear logjam with their infielders. I think that they would almost be silly not to at least consider parting ways with one of them by the deadline.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting discussion. This Mets team is probably going to be more active at the trade deadline this year than they were last year. Who knows if it's an infielder? I mean, maybe Mark Vientos comes in here and has a good month of hitting and the Mets don't have to worry about that anymore. That'd be nice. But with Mauricio, I was pleasantly surprised with how clean his defense was. I think he made one error in Atlanta, but that was pretty much all I saw in terms of miscues at third base and second base. He looked clean there. I know that he was hitting well at AAA before he came up, but I really do think the Mets organization probably wanted him to get closer to, a full month of run before getting the call. And
Absolutely.
I think he just kind of got thrust into it. It was exciting, but very clearly was a rushed move. And I hope he doesn't suffer developmentally too much because of that. It was nice to see him again, but hopefully we get him again in September where we get a more polished Ronnie Mauricio at the plate. So Vientos is due back. That's good. What about the pitching? because the pitching clearly needs reinforcements right now. We got Paul Blackburn starting tonight. We got Frankie Montas starting on Tuesday.
Paul was starting tonight.
Yeah, tonight's Paul Blackburn versus Spencer Schwellenbach. Buckle up, folks. They got good news on Kodai Senga's hamstring strain, but still, that looks like mid-August for him. We got one more Sean Manaea rehab start before we see him, probably in that series against the Brewers in early July. So the reinforcement for now is going to be Frankie Montas on Tuesday against the Atlanta Braves facing Spencer Strider. Montas had a 12 ERA in 4 rehab outings. He allowed 5 home runs. I guess what is the expectation? What is the hope? What would you be satisfied with watching Frankie Montas make his Mets debut on Tuesday?
For his Mets debut, I would be satisfied with 4 2/3 inning of 2 earned run ball with 2 walks or less. That's like without even hesitation, first thing that pops in my mind. I'm not expecting him to light the world on fire, nor am I, hoping, or I kind of expect, but I'm hoping he doesn't get absolutely lit up. Obviously, it really depends on where you fall in the category, Jolly, as a fan. Where do you take the rehab outings as an end-all be-all? Are you the same fan that says, you know what, spring training results are exactly what they're going to be at the major league level? Or do you understand, I think, the flows? And that's kind of my point I'm trying to make here is, even if Montas is not effective right away, I do actually have a good amount of confidence in him that he will get there. I think fans are just going to be underwhelmed with the immediate impact, because I think if the Mets could have kept him in there a little bit longer for an extended rehab, which is not something you typically do after you had 30 days, but you actually can go back and ask Major League Baseball themselves, say, hey, is there any way that we can kind of stretch this out another week or two just to give him more reps? We know he's healthy, but he really just needs more work in than anything else. I don't expect him to do that. So right now we just have to hope that he's not complete batting practice out there. But I think as we get a month into Montas is where we're hopefully going to finally start to see him really being the guy as to why David Stearns was so willing and so easy to cut bait with Luis Severino for now this $34 million man. Yeah,
you mentioned $34 million. This is it has the potential to be, maybe one of the first stains on David Stearns' resume as president of baseball operations here. Not only is it a 2-year, $34 million deal, it's a player option as well. So very Montas friendly. There's got to be a lot of belief there. I'm sure this front office saw something. He says that he feels good. He says that it's the strongest his arm and shoulder have felt in a calendar year. So we'll see. Lat injuries are pretty serious, so it's a tough thing to come back from. But this is a guy that the Mets have expectations for. This is not, pleasant surprise Griffin Canning regressing to the mean. This is a guy that they paid real money for to be a real member of this starting rotation. And he's going to be thrown right into the fire in a game that the Mets really need, because they have not played good ball against their division rivals. So he'll be going Tuesday. We got the probables for the whole series here. I'll read them out really quick. It is going to be Paul Blackburn tonight. Blackburn did not look good against the Atlanta Braves. It started his outing with a moonshot piss missile against Ronald Acuna Jr. on the very first pitch of the game, and that kind of set the tone for the rest of his outing. Spencer Schwellenbach goes to the Braves. He has really good numbers against the Mets in his career. Game 2 is going to be Strider versus Montas. Strider, again, a guy that the Mets have hit pretty well throughout all of his outings, even when he was at his height in 2022. They've always seemed to hit him well. He had a good outing last time. He'll go against Frankie Montas. Game 3, Fuentes for the Braves, the rookie they called up, and they pushed him out just so the Mets wouldn't get to face Bryce Elder, which is pretty frustrating. The Mets always hit Bryce Elder. This is going to be the second straight series where we don't get to face him. Tough. Clay Holmes will go in Game 3. He had a pretty rough outing that he almost threaded the needle out of in the finale in Atlanta. He's 7-4 with a 3.04 ERA. That's pretty nice. And then Grant Holmes goes in Game 4. He's coming off a 15 strikeout performance against the Rockies.
And they lost.
And they lost somehow. I don't get that. And Griffin Canning will go in Game 4. I mentioned to you what kind of outing you want to see from Montas. I think if we get what we just saw with Griffin Canning, that 5 innings, 3 earned runs, don't be afraid of the opposing hitters, throw strikes, gut it out. If balls in play, whatever. Don't walk people. If I get that version of Montas, I'm expecting a few home run balls, whatever. I think that's something that you can hang your hat on and say, okay, it's his first outing in 6 months at the major league level, and he's coming off a serious injury. The rehab was way worse. We can work with this. Just don't get your shit rocked, please. Don't get your shit rocked, man. The Mets still have the best home record in baseball, 27-10 by winning percentage. That's the best. They were 27-7 before that Rays sweep. Hopefully they can get back to their winning ways. Hopefully we get some good crowds, because it's going to be really, really hot tonight. Like 95 degrees tonight, 100 degrees tomorrow.
It's going to be a great crowd, y'all. Are you going to be there?
So I have tickets to Tuesday's game. I can't go because John Boy Media just formed their first softball team, and we have our first game on Tuesday. So I am giving away those tickets. If you want to know how to enter and get that giveaway, check me out on Twitter or Instagram. I'll be posting something there of how to enter and win those tickets. They're nice seats. They're up on the third baseline, hundreds.
Oh, very nice. I was going to say now, there's pros and cons of going to Mets games right now. The pro, it's going to be packed. If you enjoy playoff atmosphere throughout the entire season, now's the time to do it. It's been like that pretty much since the year began, and it really has not changed since then. The downside, are you willing to be in potentially 96-degree weather to see the Mets go 2 for 11 with runners in scoring position? You decide.
How big of a fan are you? That's the real question. How big of a fan are you?
Yeah.
I haven't been. So I was at the McNeil walk-off versus the Nationals, which was on the 10th. I haven't been to a game since then. I've been slacking, but I'm 6-2 on the year. Do you know your record this year in Mets games?
So I think I'm either 500 or a game below 500 because I'm on a 3-game L streak. I mean, leave it awarded to somehow, some way, witness like just as many wins as many losses at home when the Mets are 27-10 this year. And you know what? It's unfortunate because some of the games I've went to, I typically wouldn't attend because you could see like the vibes, whether it's a certain day in the week, weather, and how they perform at this point in the season. But there's obligations. I got to hit games sometimes for respective reasons. So I got to be there no matter what. It just, especially that Rays series, I did not feel good about at all, but I knew I had to go to the first 2 games. So I'm like, let's just see what happens. And, you know, unfortunately, they've dropped their games. So I will just say this in regards to the Mets and for everyone attending games, continue to show up because they're very reliant on how the fans have been, especially Francisco Lindor. That's why this past couple games, and I know you noticed this too, he's finally started to heat up, and that's great. Because prior to that, Lindor's actually been one of the Mets' bigger liabilities on the road this season. I know that's kind of shocking to hear.
I didn't know that.
Just entered this Phillies series with tops the Mendoza line on the road, right around his 600 OPS there. Leaves a bit to be desired. So to see him actually I know they're more drastic than you think. And at home, you know, when he has everyone singing My Girl, he locks the hell in. And he knows exactly what he's got to do. So when the fans are there, when the vibes are there, Lindor has been there. Up until the past 48 hours, though, outside of that, he hasn't been there so much this season.
Yeah, I wonder what those away splits actually looked like before these last 2 games where you had a home run in each, because 1,000 OPS at home, 336 batting average, 401 on base, 603 slug, 11 homers in 37 home games compared to the 641 OPS on the road, which was probably a lot lower before the last 2 games. So thank you for bringing my attention to that. I had no idea that split. I might have to post that later because that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's bananas. I was just looking through the splits the other day. I was like, is it really that drastic? I'm like,
crazy.
I know we haven't been great on the road this year, but okay, we ride through Lindor. I think you just tweeted this yesterday.
Yeah, that was...
And you couldn't be more right. And that is both a good and a bad thing, I think, for this Mets team. I'm all cool with Lindor being the captain to help pave the way, but he can't be the end-all, be-all. And when he gets to.
It really does feel like these days the Mets only go when Francisco Lindor goes, and you saw that in Game 2 when he kind of led the charge on offense, and hopefully that is not a going theme, because in April it kind of felt like the team only went when Alonso went. In May it kind of only felt like the team went when Lindor went. And these days maybe it's Soto, I don't know, but the Mets need to be a more cohesive unit, and I still have all the faith in the world that they can be, and hopefully these reinforcements can help out a little bit. Outside of that, there's a couple other bullpen notes. Max Kranick is going to be on the shelf for 3 to 4 weeks with a flexor strain. Shouldn't be too serious there. Brooks Raley continues to trend in a good way. He's been pitching well at St. Lucie, so we'll see. Mets could really use a leverage lefty reliever, and maybe they don't need to trade for one. Maybe they found one in old friend Brooks Raley. But outside of that, a big 4-game set with these Braves coming up here. The Mets will get to dodge Paul Skeens when they go face the Pirates this weekend, which is huge news based on the way things are lined up. Just give me a split. You know, I don't even need a series win. Just like show that you're capable of beating the Atlanta Braves at any point this season, because you're not going to face the Phillies again until late August. I'm not sure when they face the Braves again, but this might be your last meeting for a while with a serious division rival. Show that you're capable of beating them. If you go 2-2 in the series, that means you went, what is it? You went 3-7 against your division rivals. It's not good, but it's better than 1-9, whatever we're staring down the barrel of. So just get a couple wins, beat the pitchers that you should be beating, and put this Braves team away, man. I mean, you had a chance to bury them completely. You went to Atlanta and you fully resurrected them. The Marlins have thrown us a God-given bone. They took 2 out of 3. I don't know how they did it, but they took it
I don't
in
even know how they did that either. That's insane.
pretty convincing fashion. Like, both their wins were like legit wins. So like, show why you're better than this Braves team, not only by record but by talent as well, and make them sellers at this freaking deadline, man. Come on, make the Braves sell.
Please.
Come on,
Oh my God, that would
nice.
be amazing. I mean, heading into that initial series this past week in Atlanta, I was telling everybody, I don't know if you saw or knew this, but I was saying how this is a prime opportunity for the Atlanta Braves to get that spark that they've been looking for this season. All it takes is a stumbling Mets team heading into Atlanta and for things to go awry. And it couldn't have been more textbook, from the rain delay in game 1 to the bad fundamentals throughout that course of the entire series. You know, the lack of proper hitting approach. Like, everything to a T was the House of Horrors, what we've seen with the exception of the doubleheader there to end last season. Outside that, the Mets really have been no bueno in Atlanta. So I'm happy that they're back home for this 4-game stretch. And I would like a series split too. It's funny how only in baseball can you have a season where 2 weeks ago, 21 games above 500, 6-game heater. Now you've dropped 8 past 9. You're just hoping to settle with a split against a team that's below 500. And the reason why you're hoping is because this is not just any team below 500. This is the Atlanta Braves, who will always play up to the Mets, regardless of the situation. And it frustrates me when these Mets don't play up to that same Braves or other contending teams in the National League East, when, in my opinion, and I want to know how you feel about this, Jolly, rivalries make everything in sports.
Yes,
like, there's
of course.
nothing that I care about more than hating the Phillies, hating the Yankees, hating the Braves, because it gives you added incentive and emotion to get into it. The same way that, you know, I'm a big fight fan. I love UFC and MMA. You know, if I don't have a good storyline and a good back and forth leading up to fight night, I'm less interested, because I really enjoy that. And, you know, to see the Mets kind of be the way that they rolled over in Atlanta was disheartening. And I really do hope that they, at minimum, make sure that they're having competitive at-bats and staying in each or the majority of this 4-game set here against the Braves.
Yeah, that win last year in game 161, I felt like maybe we exercised some demons, but it very clearly was not the case with that Truist series. And the biggest thing is that if you lose this series, you got to sit with that until August 12th, which is the next time the Mets will play the Braves, and that'll be at home as well. But yeah, it's going to be a while before these division rivals play again, between the Mets and the Phillies and the Mets and the Braves. The Braves get the Phillies right after their Mets series, and then everyone's going to kind of go their separate ways. So get your wins while you can. Otherwise, it's something you're going to have to sit with for a couple months. And I hope that the Mets roster is feeling that. I hope that the crowd feels that tonight, that, you know, despite this being a weekday series in mid-June when the team's, you know, doing well record-wise, it is a big series. It should have that big series feel. I mean, the crowd was rocking when they hosted the Nationals and Rockies. Let's bring that same energy. Hopefully Citi Field's buzzing tonight. One last thing I got to do before we wrap up today's show. Another contemporary of ours on YouTube, No More Fielders. He's a big Braves fan. I told him that if the Braves completed the sweep of the Mets, I would promo his new single from his band. So I'm going to link in the description below in this Shea Station episode. It's called Feeny or Finey, F-I-N-I, by Proof. If you're into like shoegaze and like alt rock, it's very good. It's their first single. It's the only song they have on Spotify. And he's a really good dude. He's very talented. So go give him a boost, even though he is a Braves fan, which we don't support on this.
Yeah, no, Fielders is a good guy. He's one of the good Braves fans in the community. Same thing with Bailey and a couple others out there. They know where they are.
They're out there. They're out there. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Shea Station. If you enjoyed it, leave a like on our YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're listening on a podcast app, leave us a review, a rating, all that good stuff on Apple and Google. Thank you so much to Tyler Wardy NYM for being our guest host today. He did a phenomenal job. Go check out his YouTube channel. If you're wondering why the upload schedule for Shea Station stinks, you can fill the void by getting daily Mets content on his YouTube channel. He does a fantastic job. He lives and breathes blue and orange, so I thank him for being on today's show.
Thank you so much for the hype, Jolly. Always a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing the Mets at minimum split this series. Let's go, Mets, baby.
Get us that split, babe. We'll see you next time on Shea Station. Jerry will be back. We'll see you then. LFGM.
Shea Station. Jerry and Charlie. Shea Station. Jerry and Charlie. Thank you all for coming. Hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you next time, where we'll be back.
Shea Station.